Welcome to the Seth Farbman on podcast, from startup to stock exchange.
I'm sitting here today with a very dear friend and probably the smartest guy I know. His name is Moshe Joshua.
Come on.
And let me give you some background. So Moshe and I go back only 2 years or so. And, Moshe is that guy in the room where everybody's looking at each other and says, do you know a blockchain guy? You know a blockchain guy? Oh, I got a great blockchain guy. You got to speak to this guy, Moshe. Oh, that's so funny. That was the blockchain guy that I was going to introduce you to. All roads lead to Moshe. And so what's your official title with Blackmoon?
I am the Chief Product Officer.
Chief Product Officer with Blackmoon. I'm going to let him talk about it. But what I found interesting is that Moshe came to me a couple years ago, and he's been pontificating that this whole world of crypto and tokens and ICOs and STOs is going to happen. And for the first 6 months, I kind of said, yeah, come back in a year, come back in 2 years, come back in 10 years. And, unlike the Reg A world where I think it took a couple years to come to fruition, I think we can all agree that the token world is on a lightning fast track. And what I thought would be relevant in 3 or 4 years from now happened to be relevant in 3 or 4 months. So as the smartest token guy that I know, as a technologist, Moshe, first of all, it's great to have you here in Vstock World Headquarters. Tell me about Blackmoon, and tell me about your thoughts on STOs, and tell me about Reg A, and then we'll weave into that.
Blackmoon is tokenizing investments. So we basically have 3 core product lines right now. One is the main product line that we launched with, which is tokenizing funds, where funds NAV act as an ETF on our platform as a tradable object. This is beneficial for both the fund managers as well as investors, for both crypto investors and fiat investors. So we consider ourselves a bridge between the two worlds, the fiat and crypto universes, so that they can interplay with each other. Secondly, we have another product line which I just call depository, which basically is tokenization of existing assets. So today on Blackmoon you can buy ETFs SPY and EEM, and we've also tokenized the IPO Xiaomi from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and there are going to be a lot more of these types of assets. And thirdly, that we're actually releasing this week and that I'm promoting, are crypto indexes. There's a fallacy in the crypto market that there's such a thing called diversification, because if you look at any of the passively traded indexes that are out there, thinking that you're going to get diversification, you don't. Ultimately, it's a Bitcoin hodl market. Bitcoin goes up, everybody follows suit. Bitcoin goes down, everybody follows suit. And it doesn't matter, what you have in your basket. If you're not actively trading it, and you're actively managing your risk, you just basically have the same returns as if you had just owned Bitcoin. That's the ultimate analysis of the last year. As it relates to STOs, it's just this amazing concept to think that it's only been a year since the Bancor ICO, which
right.
I think was the seminal
right.
event
right.
of our universe, to think that was the first capital raise that occurred that was over $100 million and showed the world how much money you can actually raise. Now, this is when Bitcoin was like racing to 20,000,
right.
and that all played into it. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but it did open the eyes of the world of what can be.
But even a year ago at that time, STO wasn't even a concept, right? Exactly. It wasn't even a term, right? We are living through times where all these terms are being created, and they're going to become just part of our vernacular.
Follow the wave. I think it started with the DAO.
Okay.
Right? The DAO was the first attempt at building out what you would think of as a decentralized venture capital community.
Okay.
They raised $150 million worth of assets in a heartbeat, and no one really understood that there was that kind of money available in the crypto world, willing to invest in such a gambit.
Okay.
I think the next one after that was, the next landmark was the Bancor ICO. And all the other ICOs up until that point were just basically going out raising money. Nobody knew if it was fraud, if it was real, if they were a security, if it was they were just selling baseball cards and bubble gum.
And that's why everybody, you recall this, everybody that we spoke to and said, hey, do you have a transfer agent? They're like, what do I need a transfer agent for?
Yeah.
You know, it's not registered. I'm just going to issue it myself. And so everybody looked at us like we had two heads. Up until only a couple months ago with the STO, when a lot of these guys said...
even before the STO, there was utility tokens.
Correct. And they're like, what do I need you for?
We have a SAFT.
Exactly.
Right? Then you have SAFTs.
Right.
And now SAFTs are much more complicated and nuanced just because of Cooley and everything that happened with that guy.
And now they're integrating Reg A.
Which is a real... think of it. It's a soap opera. It's not even real. There's no direction in terms of knowing what's real and what's not real. And nobody knows what box to live in.
Right.
So ultimately, when you realize how much money there is to be made and how much money has been raised, two things fall into place, lock and key. The first is, why is this important? Why is this happening? It's happening because of liquidity, right? Liquidity is the name of the game here.
Right.
Traditionally, if I invested in a startup, I get a piece of paper with a lawyer's signature on it saying I own something that's absolutely worth whatever the hell it is that people tell me that it's worth.
Right.
Can I cash out? Can I monetize it? Can I borrow against it? Can I trade it? Can I transfer it? Absolutely not. Do I know what it's worth? No. How long can I know until there's an exit? 10 years? 5 years? Whatever it is. It's just, I'm throwing money in the wind and I have no idea what it is. And there's this entire industry called Silicon Valley that has, created this multi-$100 billion industry around that concept alone, which is just it's just messed up. Think about it. It's crazy. Give me your money. Come back to me in 10 years. I'll tell you how much money you got in return.
Right.
I don't know what can happen in between then. It's stupidity. So liquidity is the name of the game. The idea that I can get a token today that is an ownership right of the same investment, and if my boiler breaks, or I want to buy a house, or I want to cash out tomorrow, a week from now, 2 months from now, I can just sell it. So the story that I tell everybody goes like this. Moshe, what ICOs are you buying into? Right, you're the blockchain guy.
Right, everybody comes to you.
Everybody comes to you. What are you buying? What are you looking at, Moshe? And I say I have the same answer to everybody. Go screw yourself. You're a big boy. You want to make money. And do your homework and figure out.
I get the same thing. Oh, you're a transfer agent. What stocks? I'm like, I'm not discussing that with you.
Yeah, I'm not your broker. I'm not giving you financial advice because you're going to lose money and then you're going to blame me. And
Exactly.
You're not paying me for this advice. But you're my friend. So just do me a favor. Tell me, have you ever invested in a seed company before? No. Do you know anything about venture capital investing? No. Have you met with the management? No. Do you know anything about the product? No. Do you know anything about the industry? No. So why? Why today?
Just because it has that name of a token that they want to jump in.
But their answer, by the way, you and I had the same conversation.
Yeah.
The answer that makes them right and me wrong is, but Moshe, if I'm wrong, I'll just sell it for a loss. That has changed the name of the game. Liquidity. So that's the first part. The second part is, since there's no real direction and nobody knows really where this is going, just because it's so far into the wild, wild west as it relates to regulators, compliance, banking, everybody is just now falling back on what works, what we do know, what is traditional, and that's where this term STO has really come from. Go to the chairman of the SEC and his notes. I read them and I love it. He's actually, I really enjoy reading his notes because he's basically saying the same thing. Why are you bothering me? Why do you think all of a sudden, just because you called something an ICO, is different than selling
Than the traditional term of a security. Right.
We figured this out for you long before there was this technology, and
Right.
this thing called crowdfunding, mini IPOs, right? Reg CF, Reg A Plus, whatever the 501c3s. Like, there are other ways for you to raise money. Just follow the freaking rules. Like, why do you not? Why do you think you don't?
But
have
let
to
me
follow
ask you this:
rules?
do you, as a technologist who lives, breathes, sleeps, eats code, do you think that the technology that we have now can be or needs to be advanced greatly, or the technology is here, you've got it at Blackmoon, it's just a question of now letting regulation and reality catch up? Or do we still need to develop more on the tech side for it to work?
It's a great question. It's a really phenomenal question. So there are two flip sides to this coin. Okay.
No pun intended.
The first is, you have to ask yourself, why blockchain, right? This is a term and a question that I think is being lost on people. So I'm a company and I'm going to use blockchain. Why?
Right.
Today, it's more onerous. It's harder to work with, right? It's harder to find the developers to do it. And, it's very hard to find a business model use case as to why you have to use blockchain versus other traditional alternatives.
Well, people respond to that by saying, "Well, I want to use blockchain instead of regular IPO because there's so much cryptocurrency out there looking for investments."
Well, yeah, that was maybe a few months ago.
Okay.
But now that it's lost 50%
Right,
of
that's
its
true.
value,
Right.
where do we go from
Right.
there?
Okay.
Okay. But more importantly, I would even say further, it's not even the value of the marketplace. It's just in terms of what does a blockchain-based business grant you, the business owner.
Okay.
Right? You have to hire blockchain developers, right? And the technology has throughput problems. It has latency problems, right? The fact that we have these centralized crypto exchanges that they exist just goes to show that, blockchain is not ready for prime time, right? You can't compete yet with Visa, MasterCard payment systems and banking systems and stuff like that. So it is a little bit better, in terms of the shared database and the trust network. And it does have monstrous advantages, but most of those advantages are still in the promise stage, in terms of like a real world infrastructure play. There's another part that I think is lost on everybody, that, this whole concept of blockchain was dumped on the psyche of people. And you have to think of it in terms of the CEO and CTOs of companies, of really, really large banks and really large financial institutions. They spend tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on a budget to support all of the development that they do. And here you're coming in and saying, oh, you don't need any of that.
Right.
Just use the blockchain because it's better. So first of all, that's a headache in and of itself to have that conversation, because quite frankly, it's probably not better. In terms of ownership of IP, and in terms of expenditures, and in terms of costs. So there's a really high threshold to say, well, all the money that we spent over the last 5 years,
Right.
let's get rid of that, because this is that much more valuable. So even if you were willing to get past that point, the technology today is really not up to snuff. It's not. The latency and the throughput problems is an issue. There are limitations in terms of trading. Most of the protocols that are out there, they have payment, but they don't have trade.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few, like, Ripple has trade. I think Stellar, obviously as a fork, has that trade mentality where it acts as a decentralized exchange. There are decentralized exchanges out there that extend the use cases of Ethereum. They're not really very good comparatively, in terms of the latency, in terms of finding value. But the fact that they exist shows the promise of where it is. I think that we're still waiting for the next evolution of a speed factor to play catch up. And where we are right now is basically still in the beta phase of proving out those models.
Well, I'm excited to see where things go in the future. From a compliance standpoint and regulation, combined with the fact that, we definitely see day in and day out that the STOs and the Reg A are being adopted, and people are more and more open to it. Is there anything you want to leave us with about Blackmoon that we should keep an eye out for or be aware of?
I mean, aside from Blackmoon, what about Vstock? Vstock,
you're too kind.
But Vstock. Think about it. I came in here into this office. It was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's probably close to 3 years.
3 years ago, and I was spewing, securitization on a shared database, and the tokenization of securities, right? And you looked at me.
Well, the first time I was like, "Get this crazy guy out of my office," but then I was like, "I don't know, maybe he's onto something."
You looked at me like I was nuts, and I just understood something that I think is only now starting to be understood.
Agreed.
I understood then that, this concept of blockchain is not about the price of Bitcoin. It's about asset management. It's about inventory management, right? And why did I come in here 3 years ago? Because I understood that transfer agents are the precipice of, what's the better word? What is it when you have a funnel that matches up in the middle? The pinch point,
I told you, you're the smarter guy.
Right, yeah. That doesn't mean that I know how to speak English.
Okay.
That you guys are the gateway to the transference of securities, right?
And that's our role, right? I mean, the SEC has always said that the stock transfer agent is the gateway between the shareholders and the issuer, and compliance, regulation, and I hope and I think that we'll continue to serve that role in the token world.
But the role of the transfer agent extends much further, because that gateway functionality, you guys are the owners of the registry,
right?
And the registry is the source of truth. Right? You guys are the ledger. Just because you have a computer sitting under the desk or in a closet somewhere or in an AWS, it's a centralized authority. Now, put that into a shared database where it's publicly visible. That is where the whole paradigm shift is occurring, in terms of STOs. That transfer agents like Vstock, you guys are way ahead of the game as far as I'm concerned, compared to the other transfer agents that I know, the few of them that I know. That I know because of you. But, think about it. That, I think, is really the changeover. But the role of the transfer agent isn't necessarily going to go away, because you're legally required for, Reg A and Reg A+.
Right.
That is forgotten.
Right. If nothing else, the SEC does still require it.
Yeah.
So you may not technically need us, but
from a we're talking about these waves of, the history. So, we talk about where it started from the DAO, and went into Bancor, and then went into utility tokens, and then we're talking STOs, and ultimately, everybody has forgotten. How many people have we talked to?
Hundreds.
And I introduced you to.
Yeah. And
they all end up the conversation the same way. Just what does a transfer agent do?
Right.
Who are you guys? What do you guys do? I think people think they understand how stocks are traded, but have no clue about what the underbelly operational side of it is. And only when you start pulling the layers off of understanding how the securities market actually work behind the scenes, and you see all the dirt that's under there and all the gunk that's in the engine, that you start to recognize the true value and promise of what the blockchain is.
Right.
And I think that that's true for all banking and financial systems. I think that's true for supply chain, economics. I think that's true for escrow. I think it's true for identity. Right. I think it's true for a lot of different custody, right? A lot of different, use cases for blockchain that proves promise. But today, transfer agents don't have a button. We talk about it.
Yeah.
Where's the button for a transfer agent to manage a stock on a blockchain? Until that happens, you can't do a Reg A+. Not because there's not enough business out there.
Right.
But because there's no mechanics.
It's all the customer. Every time we speak to some of these guys, and they're like, "Well, just send us a list of some of the Reg A tokens you've done." I'm like, there have been none. There are a couple in registration, but it hasn't happened yet.
Right. And Elio was the first Reg A+.
Elio was the first one Reg A, right?
Public.
Right.
That was a year and a half ago.
Right.
Just think about how fast this has gone.
Well, I'm
unbelievable.
I'm very much looking forward to living through this with you and having you come back. I would say come back in a year and we'll see how far things have come, but you could probably come back in 2 months and we'll see how far things have come.
Well, I'm here today, talking about Blackmoon. I'm here today trying to find and work out the fourth product line for Blackmoon to explore listing STOs on the Blackmoon marketplace.
Awesome.
You know, we will be regulated and compliant to the nth standard. It's certainly in European markets.
Right.
We have avenues into opening up a U.S. marketplace as well. We know how to do this. It's just a question of where do we begin.
Awesome.
And
Well,
hopefully we do that together with Vstock.
that would be very exciting. We're excited to be part of that team, and really appreciate you coming in.
All right, man.
All right, thanks, Moshe.